All right. Good afternoon, producer Susan. How are you doing today?
I'm doing great, Jersey Joe. How are you?
I'm good, thanks. Is it summer in Pennsylvania yet?
It is summer in Pennsylvania. We had all four seasons in 1 week.
So, did you get that snow you talked about last week?
We did. And I learned a new word.
What, grapple?
Grapple.
Oh, I knew that word. In fact, I think that was on Jeopardy one time. That was the word for grapple. By the way, do you try to watch Jeopardy? Remember, I said you can learn a lot in 12 minutes.
Yep.
All right. All right. So, by the way, so we don't run out of time because I've got a 4-minute clip of a Senate hearing I want to play. And hopefully share the screen with those who watch the YouTube version. But anyway, today's May the 9th. It's the situation with Jerzee Joe. And the focus of the show is news and perspective you won't hear on TV. And let me give you a rundown of the things that I'm going to try to get to today. Our quote of the day is from Nobel Award-winning physicist John Feynman on why knowledge isn't free. You know, a lot of people think knowledge is free, but he tells you why it isn't. In the stupidest thing I've heard all week, it's actually something producer Susan sent me. It was a claim that appeared on the network news on Sunday by a network news reporter that about how many alleged mass shooting incidents have occurred so far this year and how many occurred in just the previous week. They were stunning numbers. In our Science Minute, we'll tell you how many nuclear reactors are in use worldwide and how many new ones are under construction, who is building them, and why that's good for the environment. In a related story, we're going to play a 4-minute clip from a congressional hearing that took place last week where the Deputy Secretary for the U.S. Department of Energy was apparently unable or unwilling to answer some very simple questions about the cost and impacts of a green energy program he was advocating in front of the committee. In a game of hot potato, we'll tell you how a self-proclaimed sanctuary city is now busing illegal immigrants out of their city to other cities that have not declared themselves to be sanctuary cities. Are you familiar with the game of hot potato?
Yes, I am.
Well, you know, hear it. No, you take it. No, you take it. No, you take it. Anyway, so that's a kind of a hilarious game of hot potato. We'll also do a little mind game here, a little mind experiment. We're going to ask people if the U.S. government decided to start paying off the national debt by putting $1 a second into a big box to save up money to pay off our national debt, how many years it would take to fill the box with enough dollar bills to pay off the national debt. And our taxpayer relief shot comes to us from Murfreesboro, Tennessee, where a father shoots and kills one of 2 armed home invaders who was holding his mother and son at gunpoint. It's a classic. All right, I think we can fit that in. I actually dropped out 3 or 4 things I had thought about talking, but I wanted to, since I'm going to play that clip, it's a 4.5-minute clip, I wanted to give it plenty of time to talk about it. Anyway, so, you know, you always talk about the cost of something, and a lot of people think, oh, knowledge is free. Well, the physicist Richard Feynman said, knowledge isn't free. You have to pay attention. And the key word was pay attention. I mean, if you sleep through your classes, you're texting on your phone. Did you know anybody like that when you went to college?
A few.
A few. So what he said, knowledge isn't free. You have to pay attention. And I think that's true for a lot of things in life. If somebody older than wiser of you is trying to tell you something, you should probably pay attention if you want to learn something. All right, the stupidest thing I've heard all week segment. Sunday morning, producer Susan caught this one. I missed it. But the news, do you remember who the newscaster was? I think I have
I don't remember the specific reporter, but it did come from the CBS Sunday morning show.
And I might even have, I might even be able to play it. Let's see if I can bring it up and play it. It's a really short, I think a 30-second clip.
Oh, I don't even think it was that. I think it was like 10 seconds.
All right, here it is, right here. I think I can play it for you. And just listen to this hyperbole.
The suspect.
This is about the Texas shooting.
Was the nation's 23rd mass shooting in the past week alone, according to the Gun Violence Archive. There have been 100.
I'm going to back this up. And again, this was about the shooting at the Texas shopping mall. And I'm going to play it, and it is only a 20-second clip. But listen to the broadcaster in the background. This is first the sheriff speaking.
Engage the suspect and neutralize the suspect.
The attack was the nation's 23rd mass shooting in the past week alone, according to the
23 mass shootings in the past week alone. That is 3 a day. Producer, do you remember 3 shootings a day, every day last week?
No, I remember hearing about that particular shooting, which absolutely does qualify as a mass shooting. I believe 8 people were
Correct.
killed and maybe another 8 people were injured. So
Yep.
absolutely a mass shooting, but I don't recall any others besides that one this week.
Right. And I know we talked about this before, but again, the official US government definition, which I think is also very, very close to what the typical American thinks of when they hear the term mass shooting, which is, and this is a quote, 4 or more victims killed at random by a single shooter in a public place. Now, certainly the Texas mall shooting qualifies, undoubtedly. The young trans woman who shot up the school in Nashville, Tennessee, qualifies. The guy who shot up his co-workers in the bank in Louisville absolutely qualifies. But we haven't had 23 in a week. We haven't had 23 all year. You know what the actual number year to date is after 4.5 months?
I'm going to say 7.
It is exactly 7. So if you agree that a mass shooting is where a gunman in a public place kills 4 more people at random, we've had 7 such events. To claim that 23 last week, here's my question: is the broadcaster, is the reporter who made that statement, is he really that stupid that he believes that? Or does he know it's a lie, and does he think the listeners are that stupid? What do you think it is? Do you think he's that stupid, or does he think we're that stupid?
I think it's the media wanting those sound bites to get the people all riled up.
Yeah, the old thing, if it bleeds, it leads.
Mm-hmm.
Do you think in his heart of hearts he really believes that there was 23 mass shootings last week?
I don't think so.
Yet, but I'm amazed, I go on some of these liberal Facebook sites. I'm amazed at how many people hear that and believe it. I mean, there's something called confirmation bias. You're familiar with confirmation bias?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
That's where your beliefs, you want something to be true. When you hear something, no matter how outrageous, that I believe that. You don't even think twice about fact checking it. And it's really, really sad that so many people have a confirmation bias where they'll hear something like that and they will just willingly believe it as if it was fact, when clearly it is nothing of the fact. All right. So moving on. So we've previously discussed that with regard to wind and solar power generation, that unless and until viable, cost-effective methods are development that can store up to at least 72 hours worth of electricity for a medium to large city, there'll always be a requirement for 100% backup power. And why will the requirement for backup power always be there?
Lack of sun, lack of wind.
Right. There are times when the sun doesn't shine and the wind doesn't blow, and both, or like during hurricanes, the wind blows too fast. Wind turbines actually have an upper limit of about 50 miles an hour. So when the wind is howling at 60 miles an hour, 70 miles an hour, wind turbines have an automatic shutoff. So during hurricanes and gale force winds, and you certainly during a hurricane, you have no sun. And by the way, when you have a snowstorm, solar panels get covered with snow. I remember living in Syracuse, where you would get just 3 days of miserable, continuous snow covering solar panels, and there was no wind. It was just drifting snow piling up for 3 days. So again, we talked about that. Unless and until you have the ability to store 3 days worth of power, that you'll always need backup. And right now, the bulk of that backup will be fossil fuels. But here's an interesting thing about becoming backup power. If the U.S. is serious about becoming totally free from fossil fuel generated power, and understanding that you'll always need a backup power source for wind and solar, the only way to get there is with nuclear plants. It would be with nuclear power plants. But here's another question. If all of your backup power is nuclear, then why do you need any wind and solar to start with? Isn't that kind of a conundrum?
Yeah.
So, by the way, a lot of people think that nuclear power plants are going by the wayside. Do you have any guess how many nuclear power plants there are worldwide and how many are in the U.S.?
Oh, worldwide? Oh, I'm not sure about worldwide, but in the United States, there's still quite a few.
There's 92 in the U.S. There's 413 worldwide. And surprisingly, instead of shrinking, the number of nuclear power plants worldwide is growing. There's going to be 56 new nuclear power plants brought online, not under construction, brought online this year. And 2 of those 56 are going to be coming online in the United States. Now, who else is building, where are the rest of them being built? Any guess who the number one builder of new nuclear power plants is?
I want to say the Northern European countries.
And you would be wrong. The number one builder of almost half of those 56 power plants is, drum roll, China with 23.
Okay.
So China, the world's biggest producer of solar power plants, is building and will open this year, not started construction, will complete and place into operation 23 new nuclear power plants this year. I'm wondering why they're not just wallpapering their country with solar power plants. Any idea why? With solar power panels?
I mean, a country like China with its population, they use a lot of electricity.
They do. And a lot of industry. It's not just the population.
Yeah.
Remember, China is a huge producer and supplier of goods and materials all around the country.
Yeah, most of our technology, iPhones, computers, that all comes from China.
All comes from, batteries for electric cars, all comes from China. Number 2 is India with 8, Russia with 3, South Korea 3, Egypt 3, and other countries that are doing 1 or 2 include Brazil, Turkey, the UK. Here's a surprising one. The United Arab Emirates, one of the world's leading oil-producing countries, is building a nuclear power plant. Argentina, Slovakia, Belarus, Bangladesh, France, and Iran. France, I think, is doing 1 or 2, and Iran is doing 1. But so no, it is not Europe, which had been a leader. I think France has like 30 nuclear power plants, and they are building at least 1 more this year. But surprisingly, it's China, India, Russia, and that is their solution to getting away from fossil fuels, is to build nuclear, which, by the way, emits 0 carbon. It's a 0 carbon emission. So anyway, so it appears that the large segment of the rest of the world has decided to embrace nuclear power as their solution for reducing CO2 emissions from fossil fuel power plants. And I think if the U.S. was smart and rational, we would do the same. Because I really do believe that we should phase out coal-fired power plants. But again, since you're always going to need 100% backup power for wind and solar, I think that backup power should either be natural gas or preferably nuclear. And if it's nuclear, then you have to ask yourself, do we really need all that wind and solar? Any thoughts on that issue?
Yeah, well, and we've also talked a little bit on the show about the difference between fission and fusion, and how that technology is just becoming, they've just figured out how to do it. Now they just have to figure out how to do it on a mass scale, which I'm sure is going to happen in the next decade or so. And when that happens, those will be a different kind of nuclear power plant coming online.
And for those who aren't familiar with the reference, to date, all of our nuclear power has been fission, where we split large uranium atoms into smaller atoms. We take a neutron and we fire it, and you get a reaction going, and we break these large uranium atoms into smaller atoms. And the sum of the 2 smaller the sum of the masses of the 2 smaller atoms is less than the mass of the original uranium atom. And Einstein's equation, E equals mc squared. Well, energy, that stands for energy equals mass times the speed of light squared. So what happens in that fission reaction is that the mass that is lost is converted to energy, and it's huge amounts of energy. That's why you can get an atomic bomb that can obliterate a city the size of Manhattan out of a chunk of uranium the size of a bowling ball, because it only takes the loss of an ounce or so of material to give you a massive nuclear explosion. Now, so let's talk about fusion. Fusion is the other way around. When you start with very small atoms like hydrogen, if you can force 4 hydrogen atoms together to form 1 helium atom, that 1 helium atom weighs less than the 4 hydrogens that you smash together. And that, by the way, is how the sun works. The sun is one massive fusion reactor. In the sun, the heat and pressure, the gravity of the sun forces hydrogen atoms to smash together and convert into helium. And the loss of mass, because again, the helium atom weighs less than the 4 hydrogens that made it, is converted to energy. And so the sun and all stars are basically massive fusion reactors. And we're just now starting to be able to simulate fusion reactions in a controlled environment in a laboratory. By the way, you've heard about atomic bombs and H bombs. Well, atomic bombs were the original fission. You started with uranium, plutonium, uranium, and you split them and you wound up with a fission, nuclear explosion, atomic bomb, and radioactivity. Then 20 years ago, you started to hear about H bombs. Well, H bombs are in fact fusion nuclear reactions that you literally fuse hydrogen together to form helium. But the difference between an atomic bomb and an H bomb is an H bomb, there's no radioactivity because when you create, it's called a thermonuclear fusion reaction, and an H bomb is not radioactive. Atomic bombs, which are uranium-based or radioactive, hydrogen thermonuclear bombs are not. It's merely smashing hydrogen together to form helium. Anyway, so we've had fusion reactions for 20 years, but they've always been uncontrolled. And by uncontrolled, I mean in the form of a bomb. What they're now basically trying to do, if you want to simplify it, is to find a way to make a hydrogen bomb explode very, very, very slowly. So it's a controlled detonation of a hydrogen bomb, if you will. Does that make sense?
Yep.
All right. So let's move on. So do you know that I live very, very close to a self-avowed sanctuary city?
Yes, you probably live within an hour.
That's right. And you know what that sanctuary city is?
New York City.
New York City. So anyway, Mayor of Texas, the governor of Texas, Greg Abbott, who is being literally overwhelmed with millions. The process right now is these people come across the border, they're apprehended by Customs and Immigration, they process them, they give them a piece of paper, a notice to appear, and they say you're free to go. Well, Texas is overwhelmed. I mean, they've got immigrants sleeping on the sidewalk in freezing weather outside of shelters because there's literally no place to put these people. I mean, little towns like El Paso and Brownsville, I mean, they're just completely overwhelmed. So Mayor Abbott, Governor Abbott looked around over all these sanctuary cities, Los Angeles, San Francisco, Chicago, say, hey, you're a sanctuary, here you go. So he's been busing migrants from Texas to these sanctuary cities. Well, Mayor Eric Adams of New York City said, oh, no, we can't take any more. So last Friday, he called up the supervisor of Rockland County, which is a New York county just north of New York City, and said, hey, get ready. We're going to send you 340 male immigrants from New York City. We've rented some space in a hotel in one of your towns, and we're going to send them. And oh, by the way, he then called up the mayor of Newburgh, New York, which is a little further up the Hudson River, and said, hey, we're going to send you a couple of bus loads too. Now, here's the hypocritical part. 8 days ago, Mayor Adams called Governor Greg Abbott morally bankrupt for busing illegal immigrants who had been released into his state to other cities like New York. So a week ago, he's calling Governor Abbott morally bankrupt for doing exactly what he's now doing to these other cities and towns and counties. I mean, is that the height of hypocrisy?
Absolutely.
So if you haven't seen it, I'll try to include the clip. I've got a clip. How much time we got on the meter?
You have about 10 minutes, less than 10 minutes.
I probably won't play that because I want to get to the 4-minute. So here's a little mind exercise. 31 trillion national debt. So the government, remember, there used to be a thing called the dime savings bank where you put a dime a day in a piggy bank. Mm-hmm. Anyway, if the United States had a big box, a savings where they're going to put $1 a second into the big box to save up enough money to pay off the national debt, which is currently a little over 31 trillion. How many years do you think it would take to pay off $31 trillion? Assuming that the interest on the debt stopped.
Yeah. So doing some quick math in my head, I'm going to say that is 1 million years.
Very, very close. It's 981,000 years Now, if we made it $10 a second, it'd be 98,000 years. If we made it a $100 bill every second, it'd be 9,800 years. But guess what? That's with no interest. You know what the current annual interest in the national debt is?
Oh, I have no idea.
Try $450 billion.
Oh.
So even at a $100 bill per second, you would still never pay off $31 trillion in national debt. By the way, there's 31.5 million seconds in a year.
Mhm.
So at $10 a second, it'd be 310 million. Yeah, 310 million. And at $100 a second, it'd be 3.1 billion at $100 per second, $3.1 billion a year. Yet the interest is 450 billion per year. So even at $100 per second going into a big box, you can never pay off the national debt. Is that scary?
Yeah,
I mean,
it just gets, passed down from administration to administration, and it keeps getting worse.
getting worse. All right. I'm going to try to play let me tee this up. There was a hearing last week in the Senate where the Deputy Secretary of the U.S. Department of Energy, he's coming before the Senate committee trying to advocate for a program that would result in our economy becoming carbon neutral by 2050. Now, if you're going before a Senate committee and you're going to advocate for a program that's going to cost trillions of dollars, wouldn't you be loaded for bear? Wouldn't you have your facts and figures all set?
Oh, absolutely.
Now, and by the way, and this guy has 6 of his key staff members sitting directly behind him. Supposedly for the purpose that if you were asked a question that you didn't have the answer to, you could turn around and say, Bob, do you have that number? Or Mary, do you have that information? So, but listen to this. This is so embarrassing. I don't know if this guy is a complete idiot or he's a lying weasel, because the senator who's John Kennedy from Louisiana keeps asking him these incredibly simple questions that he is either unable or unwilling to question. And I don't know if it's comical or sad or maddening the way he twists himself into contortions to not answer these very simple questions. So listen to every question and listen how he goes out of his way not to answer. And I'm going to try to do the share screen so those who watch on YouTube can actually see this. All right. What happened to it? Here we go. All right, going to share this. Here we go. Senator John Kennedy.
Tease for a moment. Give me your best estimate, just an estimate, I know, of how soon you think the United States of America will be carbon neutral.
So I think, according to the climate scientists around the world, and certainly the cutting edge scientists that we need to rely on here in the US, we've got to get carbon neutral by 2050. And I'm very...
Notice he said, we've got to get. He didn't answer the question, we will be. He said, we've got to get.
Right. Comfortable with that target, and I think that's the appropriate target.
By 2050.
Which is only 27 years. That is not a long time away.
And how much will that cost?
So the cost that I focus on even more is all the costs that are going.
So he asked for a number, and instead of giving him a number like 10 million, 10 trillion, 20, he says the cost I focus on. Here we go.
If we don't
how much will it cost to get us carbon neutral?
It's going to cost trillions of dollars, and it'll cost tens of trillions of dollars if we don't get our act together.
How many trillions?
I don't have the estimate or the numbers in front of me. I've seen a variety of different estimates, but it's a large amount. Fundamentally.
Now, by the way, in another minute, so now he's saying, oh, I don't have the number in front of you. In another minute, he's gonna make the claim that they've done the cost benefit analysis and the benefit outweighs the cost. And my question is, if you don't know the number, then how can you make a statement that the benefits outweigh the cost? Because in order to come to that conclusion, you have to know the value of the benefit and the cost, don't you?
Yep.
So I'm going to back this up a little bit. Hang on a second. Let me just back this up just a tad.
How much will it cost to get us carbon neutral?
It's going to cost trillions of dollars, and it'll cost tens of trillions of dollars if we don't get our act together.
How many trillions?
I don't have the estimate or the numbers in front of me. I've seen a variety of different estimates, but it's a large amount. Fundamentally transforming our energy
Tell me
economy
the
is a
estimates.
big deal.
Tell me the estimates that you've seen.
I don't have those numbers right on hand.
So you're advocating that we become carbon neutral, but you don't know how much it's gonna cost.
So there's an awful lot of estimates out there. It
Yeah,
depends
but
on
you're
technology
the
improvement and other
deputy
kinds of things.
secretary, you're the expert.
I
Give me
know,
an
I know
estimate
with
of how much
the
it's gonna cost.
I know with the certainty of all the experts I've spoken about, it's cheaper to get our act together than it is to not get our act together on climate change.
Okay, then tell me the cost
Orders
versus
of
the
magnitude.
cost that if we don't do it.
I think it's orders of magnitude different. If we
I
don't
know
get our
that,
act
but
together,
you-
it's.
You don't have a cost? You want us to get there, but you can't tell the American taxpayer how much it's gonna cost? Is that your testimony?
It's gonna save us money, and there's a lot of jobs.
Well, how do we
A lot of
know? You don't
American
know how much it's gonna cost.
I'd be happy to pull up the latest numbers that I've seen.
How about
Compare
$50
notes.
trillion? Is that right?
It's gonna cost trillions of dollars. There's no doubt about it.
Okay, if we spend trillions of dollars and we achieve, some of your colleagues estimate 50 trillion, and it disappoints me that you're not willing to give the estimates. I hope you're not telling me you have no idea how much it's gonna cost. That creates a whole new host of problems. But if it costs $50 trillion, as some of your colleagues have testified, to become carbon neutral by 2050. And I'm all for carbon neutrality, by the way. How much is that going to lower world temperatures? Or how much is that going to reduce the increase in world temperatures?
So every country around the world needs to get its act together. Our emissions are about 13% of.
Did that answer the simple question he asked? No, it's evasive.
No, it didn't.
It's evasive. Here you go.
Global emissions.
Yeah, but if you
right
could
now.
answer my question, if we spend $50 trillion to become carbon neutral in the United States of America by 2050, you're the Deputy Secretary of Energy. Give me your estimate of how much that is going to reduce world temperatures.
So first of all, it's a net cost. It's what benefits we're having from getting our act together and reducing all of those climate benefits. We're
Let
seeing
me ask again,
hundreds of
maybe
billions
I'm
of dollars
being,
right now.
maybe I'm not being clear. If we spent $50 trillion to become carbon neutral by 2050 in the United States of America, how much is that going to reduce world temperatures?
This is a global problem. So we need to reduce our emissions and we need to do everything we can.
How much,
to-
if we do our
other
part, is
countries.
it going to reduce?
So
world
we're
temperatures?
13% of global emissions.
You don't
right
know,
now.
do you? You don't know, do you?
You can do the math. We need to.
You don't know, do you, Mr. Secretary?
So we're 13% of.
If
global
you know,
emissions.
why won't
If
you
we
tell
went-
me?
If we went to zero, that would be 13%.
You don't know, do you? You just want us to spend $50 trillion and you don't have the slightest idea whether it's going to reduce world temperatures. Now, I'm all for carbon neutrality, but you're the Deputy Secretary of the Department of Energy, and you're advocating we spend trillions of dollars to seek carbon neutrality, and you can't, and this isn't your money or my money, it's taxpayer money, and you can't tell me how much it's going to lower world temperatures?
Remember, this guy has 6 of his senior staffers sitting right behind him.
Or you won't tell me? You know, but you won't?
In my heart of hearts, there is no way the world gets its act together on climate change unless the US leads.
Tell me how much it's
The
going
US
to
needs to
reduce.
lead.
You can't tell me. Either that or you won't.
We're
And
13%,
that's-
15%
The
roughly of
President of
global
the United
emissions.
States needs, I've still got a few seconds. I got 22 seconds. I'm going to use them a different way. Mr. Secretary, shaming you for not answering the questions. Madam Administrator, how are we going to get plutonium pit production?
All right, producer Susan, was that the most embarrassing interview you've ever?
Yeah, and we talk about accountability and things like that. I don't know who this guy is. This Kennedy, is that his name?
Well,
He's
it
doing
was,
his
it was Senator John Kennedy.
Senator John Kennedy. He's doing his job. He's asking the questions that need to be answered, and this other guy can't or won't answer them.
Right. I think one, I've never seen a guy, I can't believe he's that stupid. If he's that stupid, he should be fired. I think he was being intentionally evasive. And again, he had his entire staff sitting behind him. By the way, I hadn't thought of this before, but going back to nuclear power, you could build 30 new nuclear power plants for a fraction of 50 trillion. I mean, even if a nuclear power plant was $500 billion, right? So you could get rid of every fossil fuel power plant in the United States and have all electric vehicles. Just build, what did we say? We had 92 nuclear power plants in the United States?
No, yeah, just under 100.
Yeah, just under 100. So build another 100. Do you think it would cost you $50 trillion to build
No.
another? No.
No.
So,
and I think, I think things like the movies like scare people into thinking that these are dangerous things. They're actually very safe things. There's a lot of checks and balances internally. The only place I think they're really dangerous, I mean, we hear about things like Chernobyl that happened, I don't know, what was that, like almost 40 years ago?
40 and 3 Mile Line was 55 years ago, right?
Yeah, no, it was not that long ago. It was when I was a little kid.
Okay, or 30.
And I'm not 50.
Okay, 35 years ago. Okay.
But they're really quite safe. And I think the only time they're really dangerous is like over in Ukraine when you're talking about war.
Right. But yeah, no, but
they're really safe. They're safe things.
Right, because we've got 413 operating. So, if you take operating years, so, take the last decade, we have over 4,000 years, whatever, take 413 times a decade, and that's over 4,000. Normally you would say man hours, but I don't know but we haven't had it other than the Fukushima, where the tidal wave hit the plant that was built on the coastline. That's been the only, and even that didn't turn out to be that catastrophic.
No, and 3 Mile Island, like I've been there. It's not a contamination site. It's
it's not. So yeah, and
I think the only big contamination site is the one that's in Japan and Chernobyl.
Yep. All right.
So you've got 2 in the entire world that have become disaster sites.
Right. So, all in all, you have a better than 99%, safety record. Anyway, I don't want to run out of time. How much time we got?
You have 5 minutes.
All right. So again, taxpayer relief shot is going to move right along. I'm just going to let the sheriff of Santa Rosa County, Florida, explain to you what a taxpayer relief shot is. If I can find my little clip. I don't know what I did with my little clip, but I'm looking for it. Well,
as the dog scares the passerbys away. It's a nice day. I got all the windows open and he's barking at all the passerbys.
Okay, hang on. So let's find the sheriff of Santa Rosa, Florida. And here we go.
Somebody's breaking in your house, you're more than welcome to shoot them in Santa Rosa County. We prefer that you do, actually. Hopefully you'll save the taxpayers money.
And again, $75,000 a year to keep a thug in jail, $200,000 to try him. So when a good guy or a good woman with a gun shoots and kills the thug, you save the taxpayers close to $1 million. Anyway, Murfreesboro, Tennessee, father, 2 armed men break into this guy's house where he lives with his mother and his son, and he has a dog, and they tase his dog. And he's in the back room. He hears a commotion going on, and I'll just let this gentleman explain what happened when he heard the commotion. Here we go.
Intentions was.
Oh, hang on.
I don't know what their intentions was, but I'm glad their plan didn't work out right.
Yeah, today one man pretty thankful his son and mother are still alive after a close call at their home in Murfreesboro. 2 men broke in armed with a gun.
News Channel 5's Olivia Michael spoke with the homeowner about that terrifying experience.
This is the home where 2 men broke in, tased the family dog, and held a teenager at gunpoint. That's when the father tells us he jumped into action. It was Friday night when this Murfreesboro man says he was about to go out until a phone call kept him home just a little bit longer.
I heard my dog make a noise like someone was hurting, and I heard a taser.
The man lives here with his mother and teenage son. He asked us not to show his face or use his name.
Then I heard my son holler out, "Don't shoot," so I knew something wasn't right then. So I retrieved my gun and came out of my room. That's when I seen the intruder had the gun pointed towards my son.
Says instinct kicked in as he pulled the trigger.
It was either them or me. That's how I was looking at it.
Police found 52-year-old Kevin Ford dead at the scene. 42-year-old Clifford Wright was found with gunshot wounds at the Salvation Army on Main Street.
I wish it wouldn't have happened, but I'm glad it wasn't my way instead of their way.
Bullet holes remain on the side of the house, but the homeowner says he's lucky they did not come from the intruder's gun.
Right now, I'm not even worried about myself and how I feel. As long as me personally, as long as my mother and son all right, I'll be all right.
Police say he will not be charged for shooting the men. Olivia Michael, News Channel 5.
Now, is that a classic, producer Susan?
Yeah.
It was 2-on-1, two armed guys
Yep.
against one armed dad, and dad must spent some time at the gun range because he took on two of them, killed one and wounded the other. And how do we classify the guy that was found dead in the house?
Dead right there.
DRT, dead right there. So anyway, that's our taxpayer relief shot. It's a classic. And by the way, these things are not hard to find. I actually have to sort through and find out the best one. And by the way, there's always 3 or 4 fatals every week. And for every fatal, there's another 3 or 4 where the bad guy was shot and wounded, but that doesn't count as a taxpayer relief shot because when you only wound the bad guy, then you still have to put him in jail and all the rest of this. But these are not rare, some people say, oh, a good guy with a gun is a myth. It rarely happens. No, it happens every week. It happens almost every single day. I just try to pick out the best ones. Anyway, we're running out of time. So I want to thank all of you who took the time out of your day to listen, for giving up 30 minutes out of your busy day. I hope you learned something and listen to me ramble on about things I find of interest and importance. Hope you found those topics as interesting and as important as I did. And if so, I hope you continue to listen to this podcast in the weeks and months to come and possibly even share them with some of your friends. If you want to see some of the materials and story links you heard me talk about today, you can find them on the Jerzee Joe website at Jerzee Joe, and that's spelled J-E-R as in Robert, Z as in zebra, E-E, JerzeeJoe.com, with Jerzee being spelled with an R and a Z and 2 E's. If you want to email me with a comment, question, or suggestion, or a suggested show topic, you can do that just by sending me an email to simply joe@JerzeeJoe.com. Just remember to spell Jerzee Joe with a Z and a double E. Other than that, I've got nothing to add. Producer Sue, how about yourself?
No, enjoy this beautiful weather. Spring is here.
All right. You too, and I will talk to you next week.
All right.
Take care. Bye-bye.